guys, welcome back to my channel. So this time it's going to be about my little experiment with Vampire Covenant. In Team the Netherlands, the Dread Elves are not going to be available anymore, so I will be playing something else or trying to play something else this year than other than Dread Elves. One of the options I have is still Vampire Covenant, another is Empire of Sunstyle or Warriors of the Dark God. So basically I'm just trying out different lists and seeing what I like most for the upcoming year. And Vampire Covenant attracted me because of some lists that we saw at the ETC that gave our team quite bad pairings generally. Most notably, the double Shrieking Horror was not very popular. There's also quite some people that are quite scared of the magical move rates and stuff like that. But I thought that the Shrieking Horrors were actually more impactful. Now, I puzzled around a little bit with Vampire Covenant trying to make a good list, and this is basically what my interpretation was, but that's also due to playstyle and everything. So what do I put in a list like this? So I think you need a count. I think you just need the combat power of some vampire characters in there, because otherwise you lack a bit. Or at least these were my initial thoughts, so maybe there might be some differences now. I also wanted it to be a Wizard Master on some kind of damaging lore, such as Occultism, because Occultism does pack quite a lot of damage spells, and then you want to protect him basically. So I went for the Legend of the Black King, Halberd with Kingslayer for just some offensive output, Obsidian Rock because, well, that basically came from the rest of the list at some point. And then I have Von Karnstein and Stormcaller. I don't know if this is the best option here, but with the Shrieking Horrors, I do want basically an 18-inch march bubble, or some other way of marching them, or you need the magic to make the magically move. But I will get to the magical move a bit later. So Von Karnstein seemed to be a good option here, because it also pairs with Stormcaller, and I think Vampire Covenant in ETC format is quite a good faction to go for, a list that can play the long game and basically neuter a lot of matchups into neutral matchups. And then Stormcaller is quite good at making sure that you have something to drop against gun lines, which is something that we generally as Team Netherlands struggle a bit less with, because we have a lot of players that really want to go for the win, I feel like, and we don't have that many people with very passive armies, or armies that can just tank a matchup. So that is why this entry came to be like this. I feel like this price is actually way too high for what you get, but I already went on the forum to complain about that, because that is what you naturally do in a situation like that. And then people told me that, well, the counts have very high value for the army, and they provide other buffs to the army that you don't directly see and stuff, and it's fine. I'm not convinced by the 940 point cost for this piece, but let's keep it at that. Then we have for 435, which is a more reasonable price. We have a Courtier, Wizard Apprentice and Navigation with the Nosferatu, so it has Gates of the Netherworld. Basically, after playing the list a couple of times, I want two models in the army with Gates of the Netherworld, so that's going to be the Courtier and the Necromancer. In that way, with a heal, I can heal 2 wounds on a Shrieking Horror, or if I do a bubble heal, then I can heal both Shrieking Horrors and then heal 1 more wound on one of them. This guy otherwise, light armor, Destiny's Call, and a halberd. Basically, this is a setup which I think is okay for a support vampire, 4 strength 6 attacks, 4 up armor, 4 up regen, or Aegis. And then the double laser icons to go with the Obsidian Rock to get to magic resistance 4. Now you can see that I have 2 Skeletal Steeds here. That is because they can go into the Baronites. I played before with Barrowguard, and then I found that the mobility of Barrowguard is just way too low to be able to do anything with them. Also, the rest of the list, Vampire Core, already just contains infantry units up to infinity, as many as you like. So you do need something to zone, I feel. You need some threat range. And then it's either going to be, if you want some scoring stuff that you can put your characters in, or some non-scoring stuff, also fine. But then it's quite quickly going to be the Bear Knights or the Vampire Knights. Power Knights versus Vampire Knights. I prefer Bear Knights because they you can heal them way more effectively than the Vampire Knights. And actually, on the charge, the damage output is not that much different. Like, if you have 5 Vampire Knights, then you do sure 15 attacks. If you keep a 5 white frontage and you put in characters, then you can only have 9 attacks from the Knights. But so if you plan to go 7 white, including characters, sure you have 15 attacks at strength 7, with offensive 4 or 5, I think. In this case, if I go 5 white with my block, because that was preferable for the Bear Knights, I will have about half the attacks, but I will have the ranks, or 1 rank at least. And I'm just more suited for the grind, I think. Also for a 5 white unit of Vampire Knights, then you will only have 9 attacks of the Vampire Knights, with 2 support attacks, so then the difference becomes even smaller. And just the fact that you can raise them back so easily is what turned me over to the Bear Knights. And then for the core, I have a big block of ghouls as a combat unit. I have 2 blocks of skeletons because a bigger unit of skeleton I found to be quite useless. They're mostly roadblocks anyway. Double Relentless Banner, just to get some extra mobility from your core. Then we have some zombies as an extra scoring. Bad Swamps as chaff, more chaff, and 2 Shrieking Horrors. So when I made this list, I was doubting a bit if the list has enough combat power, but I was really bent on playing double Shrieking Horror. If you don't play these pieces, then you can obviously put in some combat power, like blocks of ghasts. There's a lot of different Vampire Covenant lists out there. This is one option, and I wanted to try this one just to see how I would like it. So yeah, let's go into some practice games that I did. We had a practice tournament in the Netherlands. The format of this tournament is really like practice for ETC. So you play 2 games on the entire day, and then you have plenty of time for your games. You can also discuss with your opponent about the deployment, the game itself, the matchup, anything. So it's really oriented towards practice. We have Marching Columns Breakthrough, which is like one of the worst things you can get with Vampire Counts, especially in the first practice game you have, I would say. So Marching Columns is just a way to tear apart your Vampire Covenant deployment and then breakthrough. Especially against something like this, it's just horrific to me. As with Marching Columns, I was playing a list at this point where I didn't have the Necromancer yet with the Crown of Autocracy. Instead, I had a Vampire Court Chase, so my movement was really limited to the count and 18-inch around that. So I was up against Ogres, a shooty Ogre list, and looking at the matchup, I was like, well, I can basically handle this because of Stormcaller. I don't really care about 23 Bombardiers, which is normally something that opponents would really struggle against. And in that sense, I was right. However, what I was not right about was the combat power of my units. So this is still an iteration where I was playing with my skeletons, a big block of skeletons. Yeah, this was combat-wise, this was horrific. Like 8 Bombardiers, they just go through 32 ghouls without any problem. If they get the charge, and they do get the charge because I only have advance 4. So in my situation, the Bombardiers, they charged the ghouls got completely annihilated with like 3 Bombardiers left. So I did some damage, but in the end, well, I just take so much damage back that the ghouls just evaporated. Skeletons evaporated, they did like 1 wound or something. So basically your entire core in this matchup I felt was quite useless. The horrors, my opponent was quite afraid of them. Once they have like 3 wounds on them or something, then they're also quite useless. Like a unit of Bombardiers can just charge a horror and then deal with it, even if it only has 2 wounds on it. It's if you have like 1 or 2 wounds on them, then they become practically useless, I would say. So it's just a great zoning tool, but you don't need 1000 points of zoning. So the only unit that was really valuable in this match was the Baronites with the 2 characters in there, which is a 2000 point unit. So in the end, my opponent wasn't able to do a substantial amount of wounds to this unit, based on the matchup as well. So that unit survived in the end. I did get 3000 points, my opponent got like 2000. We had a 900 point difference. My opponent got the objective because I did only manage to get into his deployment zone with 1 unit, and the rest got completely annihilated. It played a bit different than I thought, but that was good practice. Now we go to the next game. So this one I lost badly, as you can see by the indication that I got the 0 points. So I already played this opponent once with my Vampire Covenant list and with Double Shrieking Horror, and then I made the mistake of putting them in such a way that he could charge with his Overlord, get to the first horror, then over into the second, because I didn't see the Onyx core there. I stopped reading at Eye of the Bull. Basically, this piece is just a counter against Shrieking Horrors, I would say, if he gets the charge. So I shouldn't let him get the charge. I was quite mindful to not do that. So we played in this game Refused Flank, Hold Ground, which basically is something that my list, I would say, was quite good at. So we got to the situation where I was standing with my Baronites at the edge of the Hold Ground. My opponent was standing on the other side. The shooting was kind of useless because of Stormcaller mostly. So that setup worked quite well. And then he came forward with his Infernal Warriors, with the Infernal Bastion, and I could put in the Vampire Count, the Vampire Courtier, the other Vampire Courtier, the Baronites, and the Shrieking Horror. So that's like 3000 points of stuff. Put them all in the front of the Infernal Warriors, and I killed 17 Infernal Warriors, which meant that he had 4 left together with the Bastion. He counted double ranks, so he was steadfast. He made a check and he countercharged with some stuff, not like 1 unit, and he completely wiped all of my stuff off the table. Mostly also because the Infernal Bastion kept hitting its crush attack, kept crushing stuff. Like all the characters just went down to the Infernal Bastion. It was a combination of die rolls also, and yeah, I don't know. I thought that I should be able to make use of the fact that my opponent was not going to be that mobile, so I would force him into the objective circle. I could charge then in with a lot of stuff, and then I would be able to break through his units. Apparently not. I also didn't do any damage before to the Infernal Warriors, that is fair enough. But even without the Infernal Warriors, a unit like Disciples of Lugar with paired weapons preferably, but that is just a straight up counter, I feel like, to Vampire Covenant in general. Yeah, so this matchup, I mean, in terms of combat units, in terms of playing the game, it's fine, but then you get these small things, small details in the Infernal Dwarf list that make it a bit of a challenging matchup. Like the Onyx core is a great counter against the Horrors. Occultism, Breath of Corruption, dealing, I don't know, 5 wounds to Baronites on its own, besides the shooting, makes me have to invest my magic phase into healing the knights all the time. It's I think I would put it at like a 7-point thing, depending on scenario. But yeah, that didn't really work out as well as I had hoped. And then that is the list again. I also played 2 more games online. So this one game, in this picture, we have 4 Shrieking Horrors because my opponents really like duplicating Shrieking Horrors. He also really liked to duplicate his Frost Phoenix. So spoilers. Oh no spoilers. Just a bit of explanation I can draw on this, I hope. So adjustment, where do I have a draw tool? Here. So this one is not there, this one's not there, and this one's not there. So, oh geez. So just to explain, I have my Bear Knights here, I have my Skeletons here, and Ghouls here. The Ghouls are here such in a way that he cannot go with his Phoenix over here, because then I can charge him. Shrieking Horrors are in the back, just in case that his Griffin Lord comes up to me. He has some Lancers over there, he has some Phoenix Guard, some Sea Guard, and basically that's it. He also still has a character on the Lion Chariot. So my turn, I charge with my Knights onto the Sea Guard, I believe, and then he flees with. Oh, I was charging on the Sea Guard over here at some point, because he gave me an easy charge. Then I redirected into the Chariot on a 12. He stood and I made the charge, and I was like, is this a good thing or is this a bad thing? I don't know. Turns out it wasn't a good thing. Most notably because this list didn't have the Crown of Autocracy as well, so I couldn't march anymore with the Shrieking Horrors at this point. So this is a liability for the list that I ran into a couple of times, so also the reason why I would want the Crown of Autocracy. So at that point I could still march with all of this. But even then, I charged in onto the Lion Chariot. I didn't kill it, because my Vampire Lord hits on 3s, wounds on 2s, and then he had an Aegis save or something. The Knights, they also did some damage, but between the Hereditary that was up, I believe, at this point, and the fact that my dice rolls were just iffy, I believe in the end I didn't kill him, but I broke him, luckily, and then I got an overrun. But meaning that the rest of my list was just out there to be picked up. I did charge also the Phoenix with my Ghouls. Well, that also ended rather badly for the Ghouls. I didn't really expect it to end that badly, but it's not a good engagement apparently. But it really feels like in this list, the Black Knights, they are the unit that can take beating and can dish out some damage, but the rest of the list is just useless. Even a unit of like a full unit of Ghouls, it just doesn't stack up to the rest of the combat units out there. And the Shrieking Horrors, they're nice, but they're not 500 point nice. I still have a last game to comment on. So that was the game of which I have a picture here. So this was once again against Infernal Dwarfs. So this was once again with the same list I showed you before. So as you can see, at some point in the game, well, I was cornering because the objective, I believe it was capture the flag. So I was like, well, I'll just keep my zombies safe and it's going to be fine. These are disciples of Lugar with paired weapons. These are skeletons. So at some point, my opponent was standing like this. I had a gap here for my Ghouls to flank charge, my Black Knights to charge in the front. Against 6 Qadims, I lost this combat, so this is not what I expected. My opponent also didn't expect this, to be honest. And then basically in the next shooting phase, so my magic, it's not that impressive. For like 1500 points in characters that don't have a focus on combat that much, I felt like it was quite expensive to have just 2 channel and not any other magic support. So I have to basically invest at this point my magic into healing the horrors, because my opponent still does some damage with the magic, or I apparently have to boost this combat because I don't manage. Yeah, I wasn't really feeling happy about not being able to win this combat against 6 incarnates. Luckily I could make it such that my opponent could not countercharge here, but the Citadel Guard came into the side, the Disciples went into here. This also became a 20-0 loss for me. Once again in Bastion, which is basically apparently the nemesis of my Knights. At some point in this game, what was quite nice is I do have Unbreakable Will on the Court Chase, so I did have the Vampire Count and the Court Chase at the end of some combat still standing, still against the Kadim. And I lost combat by 12. And then I could half it with Stubborn. I could take one away with the BSB, so my count still stood there with 1 wound remaining. That was funny for a combat that you lose by 12. But yeah, it's not really supposed to happen, I would say. Otherwise, yeah, just the suicide charge with Tauruk anointed. Apparently, the Shrieking Horror can't really deal with that and gets ground down to the point where I had to invest most of my magic to heal it up. As you can probably judge from my sentiment right now, I'm not very convinced by this list. I do have some modifications since the first iteration, but 500 points for Shrieking Horrors is too much. These points for the Korche and the Count is too much. So yeah, this was my short journey into Vampire Covenant. I think I'm gonna play something else from now on. I don't really want to give the impression that I have the feeling that I want to give up really quickly, because it's mostly also this playstyle that I didn't really like that much, because it felt like you are just putting your stuff on the table, chaffing up a bit, trying to do some damage with your magic, and then waiting for the game to be over. So yeah, that was not really my playstyle. I would play a different Vampire Count list now. And yeah, maybe magical moves are really necessary with the horrors, but it becomes such an investment into your list. I will definitely play differently now against a list with Shrieking Horrors, having seen what they effectively do on the table. So yeah, it's a bit of a more negative video this time, perhaps, but let's see what the next video will bring. Thank you for watching, and I'll see you the next time.